Hi, my name is Anna Bass, and this is my poster presentation for the final project of our class. Excuse me. So for the first slide, I have the Universal Learning Design. I found on CAS.org, which is also one of my sources, a nice definition that I've liked, and it's a framework to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all people based on scientific insights into how humans learn. I think that's a pretty concise way of stating what UDL is, and I like to keep that definition as I was progressing through the class. On the right side is a source. It's a YouTube video talking about UDL, but I like the visual that was incorporated with this video series. I am an artist and a visual learner, so for me, this has really helped. And when I'm trying to explain, I'll talk a little bit about this more a little bit further in the slides. When I was trying to present, for argument's sake, the importance of UDL, this visual was very helpful for my explanation. It shows why I use the UDL for equal opportunity, the benefits, the principles, the collaboration aspect, how the lesson planning incorporates with UDL, and all the ways UDL can be incorporated in the classroom, from support, assessments, variety of materials, technology, varying ways of presenting, and then some classroom examples, which would be environment flexibility, multisensory lessons, student-centered group work, and projects. So for my chapter, I thought that I would talk about, and I've mentioned this in past projects, the key to a successful SPED art classroom. This book has been extremely helpful to me, and I've often struggled with my special education class just because, as one human, I've never been able to differentiate that much. And after reading this book and the text and seeing what all technology is offered, I feel this validates an argument for me to bring technology into that art class so that I could differentiate to a much higher level, making sure I could reach all my students' needs. As I've mentioned in other projects during the course, for my SPED class, I have some kids that don't have the ability to use scissors, some that are nonverbal, some that have sensory issues when it comes to touching art supplies, some that have sound issues and need to wear headphones during instruction. So I felt like incorporation of technology and UDL principles would really help me have a more successful SPED art classroom. So for the classroom connections, I really feel what I've been focusing on after reading this text is different abilities. As I've mentioned, all the different skill levels that come into my classroom. If I have 30 students, that each one of them has a unique way of learning, how can I reach all of them successfully? The skill levels, as I said, all different skill levels. So I feel that looking at all the technology out there and some of the articles I've read for the course, I just feel there's a better way to reach my students than creating one art project and trying, well, I would say struggling to get around to each kid to try to help them the best I can. And then sometimes not even having a kid successfully complete a project, which just makes me feel like I'm not doing enough for that student. And then what I'm looking forward to in the future is using apps and art to help me reach a larger audience in my classroom. So the basis for my chapter and what I'd like to do for research and actually use this in my classroom is iPads for SPED art. I want to present this to my SPED department since luckily SPED has different funding. And normally requesting iPads would seem like a very far-fetched thing to do. But I'm hoping that with a nice presentation and with some of the statistics backed up in UDL research, I can validate needing them to reach more students in my class. For the iPad presentation, I did this for my first presentation in this course, but just to run through some of these apps quickly, the Doodle Buddy is a really great free drawing app which allows the kids to drag on the screen, and the amazing thing about this is they can erase easily. Kids that have issues with touching certain materials can actually just switch the material they're using on the screen so they can go from pencil to paint. So I found it was be a very useful in the sped art setting. Scribbly is actually really cool because it practices symmetry. So if I'm working on something as simple as drawing a butterfly, if they can draw one half of it, the app matches the other half to where they have a balanced drawing. And I used this with one of my students in class, and just to see their face light up when they were able to draw a balanced drawing was really interesting, and I wanted to explore more of the capabilities of that. Doodle Dandy allows the kids to not only draw their drawings, but to animate them, which is exciting on a whole different level. So not only could they draw a little creature or stick figure, they could actually make it move across the screen. Let's Create Pottery, I love, especially for my kids with tactile issues. They can create, there's a virtual potter's wheel, and they're actually able to practice different pottery techniques through the virtual world. And so if some kids are okay with touching clay, that would be fine. But for my kids with sensory issues, they could still participate in the project, make a pot in theory, and decorate it. And so when we display it for the school, they would actually have something to display with their classmates. And on the last one, it's Creative Bubbles, and I love this. I found this year through Teams when I'm online with my SPED class and they send me their drawings and I post them, they like to give each other likes and respond to each other's drawings and tell them good job. So with this portfolio system, we could actually give parents access to this, and they could go in and like their kids' work, or they could like other students' work. And as my general ed students appreciate getting responses online, my SPED population does as well. So I just think this is a great way to boost their confidence in the classroom. For chapter 4, this is where I envision my chapter going, because it focuses a lot on the integration of technology in an inclusive learning environment. And so after reading through all the chapters, I felt this would be the best area for my chapter to fit in because it was the incorporation into the SPED classroom. Some chapter resources. I found Reading Rockets. It's the universal design learning meeting all students' needs. And what I really loved about this resource is not only did it give me some SPED resources for UDL, it also gave me literal examples like student X did this in class. We used this technology, and these are the results we got. I like to hear how the technology works and how kids handle it. Of course, my students may react completely different to the technology, but since I do not come from a special education background in my education, it's nice for me to hear how different abilities work with different applications. An article that I'm citing that I would use for my chapter is a case study where a beginning special ed teacher talks about using differentiated instructions. I find this extremely helpful, and I'm hopeful that if this goes well, I can pass this on to other art teachers in my district, because I'm not the only art teacher that teaches the SPED population. And I think a lot of times they forget that we haven't had training in this aspect. So it would be a great way to show them, even though we're not per se beginning teachers, we haven't been trained specifically for SPED population. And this article was very insightful on some beginning techniques of how to differentiate using different apparatus and technology. And then the last is My Rookie Mistake in Special Education. Again, it's another blog site, but I like this one because it kind of talked about the trials and tribulations that a teacher went through in the process of trying to differentiate their lesson plans. All very useful for SPED population, and all very useful on the different techniques and ways they tried to make the classroom more inclusive for all their learners. For some visuals, as I said in the beginning of the presentation, I'm an extremely visual learner. I really like the basic, these two images for UDL principles, of course, representation, action, and expression. And the circle I'm focusing the most on is engagement. I want more engagement with my SPED class, and I'm hoping that through the UDL principles, I can gain more participation and hopefully an enjoyment from all my students in the class. And then on the right, a nice visual of each part of the UDL and the brain imagery to go along with that. For my discussion questions, I was looking at is differentiated instruction for SPED populations possible for a single teacher without the help of UDL technology aids? I'm hoping that through the exploration of this question, and honestly after seeing a lot of the classmates' presentations for this project and hearing everybody's discussions throughout the semester, I think it validates a higher response and a higher necessity for technology aids in the classroom and how successful we can see a student transition. And since it is becoming a technology generation and our hopes are to transition our SPED population either into an adult learning program or into the workforce, technology skills would be very useful for them to know. And I just think student engagement would increase in these classes where we say inclusion, and yes, we're putting them in a classroom with regular ed students, but if they're just sitting there, I'm not sure we're doing them the justice that we should be doing. And hopefully with technology aiding in our differentiation, we can achieve a better engagement. And then my other discussion question would be what kinds of training should be provided to teachers for UDL success in a SPED classroom? I know that the SPED teachers on our campus receive trainings, but for the regular ed teachers, because the SPED population is going to go to gym, they might go to dance, they'll go to art. What trainings are we providing to our general ed teachers to make sure that they see that same success in their classroom? I think a lot of times we wing it, which you don't want to hear a teacher say, but in essence, we haven't received the training we need to know how to differentiate properly. And as I've mentioned before, I'm not an expert in any of the special abilities. I've learned kind of as I've gone through process and just learning by having the students in my room. But I think we need to provide teachers with more training on the technology possibilities, how to use the technology, so when they come into our classroom, we're prepared and ready and can have successful lessons throughout the year.